Party, MSNBC contributor Jennifer Rubin, conservative columnist at the Washington Post, and Leon Wolf, managing editor of the conservative website The Blaze. Jennifer, the Sanford story is fascinating to me because here's someone who, I guess, ideologically is very conservative, extremely conservative, kind of Tea Party guy. He was once talked about as a presidential nominee before the big affair fall from grace. It's not like he voted the wrong way. He just basically said some moderately truthful things about how he felt about the president. That's it.
Yeah, one of his grave offenses was asking for the president to release his tax returns. The horror of it, you know? This is the problem, and this is why you see, in the words of people like Bob Corker, that you have a cult-like party at this point. They simply follow Trump wherever he meanders because he's incoherent and he's inconsistent. They're incoherent and inconsistent. And the problem with this comes when you hit the general election. Are these people who are now so tightly wrapped around Donald Trump and his tax plan and his effort to take away protections for pre-existing medical coverage, are those people electable in a general election? In some places they will be. Maybe in South Carolina you can get away with that kind of stuff. But not in a lot of places, and there are going to be a lot of competitive seats where all that Trump hugging comes back to haunt these people.
You know, Leon, I thought the two responses to Corey Stewart's win, to Jennifer's point, I think a lot of people feel that he is not a very strong candidate. The Cory Gardner, who runs the sort of senatorial campaign, says it's not on our map. So you've got a former lieutenant governor of Virginia, Bill Bolling, Republican. I'm extremely disappointed a candidate like Corey Stewart could win the Republican nomination for U.S. Senate. Clearly not the Republican Party I once knew, loved and proudly served. Every time I think things can't get worse, they do. There is no end in sight. Cheery. And then here's the President of the United States. Congratulations to Corey Stewart for his great victory for Senator from Virginia. Now he runs against a total stiff, Tim Kaine, weak on crime and borders. That's meaningless. Wants to raise your taxes. Don't underestimate Corey, a major chance of winning. That sort of sums it all up, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, the last part I think is wrong. I mean, Corey Stewart's probably going to lose by double digits in Virginia, and I certainly won't be sad about that result. I would point out, just to throw a little bit of nuance into this, I mean, we did have Barbara Comstock won in Virginia against a guy, and Trump was kind of, loyalty to Trump was the focal point of that race. Comstock was accused of being insufficiently loyal to Trump. Mike DeWine did win a Republican primary in Ohio recently, where loyalty to Trump, he was the less loyal to Trump, and I think probably Martha McSally will win in Arizona over two people who are much more Trump. So it's a little less monolithic.
Although but to the point about Barbara Comstock, she only got 60% of the vote against this guy who is an extreme Trumper. And she got less votes, or in the Republican primary, they got less votes than the Democrats. So she is a prime target, and she has tried to walk this tightrope. She doesn't want to offend Trump and Trump voters too much, but on the other hand, she has a district that's considerably to the left of her, and she is one of the top targeted seats in the country.
Yeah, and I would also say, to Leon's point, which is I think is good, it's good to introduce that, and it is definitely the case that not every race has been a referendum on how loyal you are to Trump has broken the president's way. But all you got to do to instill fear in politicians, right, is win a few of those. I mean, that's the point, right? I mean, it's hard to challenge incumbents anyway. What you are seeing is enough of a pattern, wouldn't you say, Leon, that everyone who understands where the political incentives are understands there's no upside in going against the president.
Right, and to that point, I don't think that in and of itself is all that unusual. I mean, you think about George H.W. Bush, in his first term, raised taxes, appointed a liberal justice to the Supreme Court. I went and actually did some research on this a couple days ago. I couldn't find a single elected official who endorsed Pat Buchanan in 1992, even though a large part of the voting base was very opposed to him. It's very unusual to find that, at least among elected officials, going publicly against their president. I do get what you're saying, though, because Trump is so far outside of presidential norms, you would maybe like to see that a little bit more, but I don't think it's unusual to not see it more.
Although that's an interesting example, right, Jennifer, because the point there is that Buchanan, in some ways, it is Buchanan's party now, right? And in some ways, Buchanan understood the base better than George H.W. Bush did, or understood the future of the Republican Party. And right now, it really is Buchanan's party. As you see, here's Steve King. Steve King tweeting, "Europe is waking up. Will America in time?" And that is a link to British neo-Nazi Mark Collett. That is an actual neo-Nazi. He is an admirer of Hitler, self-avowed. That is a U.S. congressman tweeting out Nazi propaganda.
Yeah, it really is amazing. Pat Buchanan's problem was that he was too early. He saw the wave rising, but he was a decade or two early. And the problem is that there really isn't a Republican Party that Bill Bolling and Jennifer Rubin can look at and say, all right, those are a bunch of decent people with some good policy ideas. It is the party of Trump, and I think suspecting or hoping or wishing that it were different is simply not realistic.
By the way, I also want to make clear, Leon, that the calculation to stick with Trump is the correct one. Like politically, that is like from a diagnostic perspective, like that is correct in the short term. In the long term, it may all end on tears, but we'll see. Jennifer Rubin, Leon Wolf.